All right, guys, welcome back to another Pro School. So this is another Q&A. I know we've been doing a lot of Q&As lately. We kind of got through a lot of a lot of the most critical stuff that I wanted to do Pro Schools on, and then we kind of had to slow down in development. But big news, we just hired a new senior developer to lead our development effort since my time has become rather short between everything that we're working on. So that should get us back up and running at full speed on the dev side, getting a lot of the features done that we've been talking about. So should have some exciting stuff to share in the next week or two on that front. So yeah, let's go ahead and just open up. Who would like to get started? Any question regarding ProLine? I'm here to help.
I can go quick if you don't mind. For like multi-structure properties, like say we've got a house and four barns or whatever, and we want to quote those all separately. What's the easiest way to like go about doing something like that?
Yep. So currently there's not a great solution to that. I would probably recommend having four different projects. Like if you had four structures on one property, I would
Hmm.
probably structure it as four projects, but then you probably don't want them signing four different quotes. So, and
How
I know that
how
makes
big are
it.
the how big's the outbuildings?
Well, I'm just kind of using like a past project as an example. We usually have a lot of houses with like a house and then like a detached garage or something. So two structures, but we did just do like a farm with like six buildings. And I mean, they're all 50 to 100 square buildings. So,
Wow.
We so what we have a lot of like bungalows with house and detached garage nearby, but then we've
mhm.
done some like that too. And like what I always end up telling customers is like, I'm going to send everything to you in one file. And then when you're ready to sign something and say I'm moving forward, I'll pull anything out of this, but it's like for just put it in one thing. Because then it
Mhm.
lives there, and then it's like, all right, if we're going to split this out into phases, okay, you can do that, but then I'm going to give you one bid where they're all in within a single bid, because then within the quote on ProLine, you should be able to just do like building A, building B, building C, and then you can do like a site map in a picture up in the quote where it's like here's the building layouts, and then it'll look nice and clean, and then they're not jumping
Mhm.
around to multiple things. But
Gotcha. And
Um,
then like for the
but you,
measurements, I guess too, like you'd have to kind of like
that's what I assume you're talking about.
manually do those or something.
Yeah, so on the measurement front, if you want to be storing the measurements for each building, you could no, you wouldn't want to just combine them. You could have multiple projects if you really wanted to store those measurements and have a place to store each one. That's where you would maybe want to do multiple projects. Even if you end up quoting through like one quote through one of the projects, you might want to have several projects just to store the measurement data. But the simpler approach would probably be keep it as one project, work on the quote. The way that I would approach it, I would make the additional buildings as upgrades in the quote. So rather than because if you add them all as options, then you're forcing them to select one out of those options, and that's what's not what you
Mhm.
want. I would structure it as you have maybe the main structure that you know 100% they want to do. Then you maybe have some good, better. I probably wouldn't even try to do good, better, best for this kind of a complex. I would I would have your main option just be like the main building, the big or the largest building, and then add each additional building as a upgrade on the quote. And then that way, too, when they're going to sign it, unless you're giving them some kind of a discount that does make it complicated. If you're like, hey, if you do X number of buildings, there's a discount, you'll have to kind of like handle that after the fact. But you can basically say, like, hey, you select whatever buildings you want to move forward with right now and sign for those. And that's what the upgrades are going to allow you to structure this as, is adding each one in as an upgrade. They can just select the ones that they want to move forward with right away. And then if they decide they don't want to do the rest later, you can duplicate that quote, remove the ones they already did, and resend it super easily. You will have to quote those um, on in a more manual way, because
Yeah.
ProLine isn't. We don't our currently our measurements don't. What we would like to do, and we may end up actually doing this within the next 30 days because we're going to be working on our Eagle View integration, and so we're going to be making some improvements. I don't know how much work this will be. And so I don't know if it's something we can work on right now, but we would like to be able to support multiple buildings under one project and have it where you can have different sets of measurements for each building. So by default, you just have building 1, right? But then you'd have the ability to add a building 2, a building 3. It just adds some complication with like, okay, now which building are we pulling the measurements from for which option or which upgrade? But that's something that we're kind of exploring right now and seeing if we can tackle that right now. So we might have a fix in the short run, or in sooner rather than later. But in the short run, you would just need to manually quote those. What you could also do if you needed to kind of speed things up and you wanted to use your calculations still, is you do the multiple projects, like I was saying, put the measurements in each one for each building, generate a normal quote under each one that you don't send, and then you can then use that as your kind of model. There's no real way to copy it in, but you can use it as a model and just copy over the quantities into those upgrades.
Okay.
One last thing, let me show you this so that you know, and this is a good thing for other people to see as well. For quotes, if you have, so you have your good, better, best, and in this case, maybe you're just going to use better, and you're going to have it. And that's, I wouldn't try to do good, better, best on when you're quoting that many different buildings. What can do is you can just duplicate this. So you can duplicate this better option. Now you have a second better option. We'll just probably delete these other 2. We don't even have to call it better anymore. Delete these other 2. Now you do have 2 options here, which is not what we want. So what we'll do is we'll make this one probably for the main building. We'll just call it like main. Oh, there we go. Main building. And we'll leave that as an option because we do need, actually, we don't even need an option. You can send a quote without options. So actually what I'd probably do is just change this to an upgrade, change this, and using this little button right here, you can swap between option and upgrade with just a click. So these are now both upgrades. And we can just keep duplicating these for every building. So we can do building 1. Oh, building 1, or this would be building 2. Pull this up.
Can you manually change measurements on each of those upgrades?
Right. Yeah. So you can then go back. You wouldn't change measurements. You would change, like, that's long term. I think what's going to have to be is there's going to be a button over here for which building to use. And then you would select which building and it would then recalculate based on that. But in the short run, you would just go and you would change these quantities. And like I said, you can run it as a separate quote on a different project with those measurements if you just need the numbers and then plug them in here. If you want to use your calculations, but it depends on if you're comfortable kind of just quoting manually on these. So you plug in the right quantities for each building. And then now when we run this quote and generate it, I'll show you what this looks like. And it'll be the right experience. We don't currently, this is a related kind of question that might pop up. Some people are like, well, I don't want to give them a choice. It's either all or nothing. Right now, we don't have a way to require all those upgrades be selected. But it's something that if we get enough requests for it, we might add the ability to have required upgrades where it's like they're by default selected. Okay, so we have our different buildings now on here. And then we have on the, so we still have the other upgrades here, and those can get removed if you don't want that to be a distraction. And that's probably what I would do for a project like, what I'd recommend for a project like this is don't necessarily have upgrades like this. That's just kind of confusing. And just have all of them as upgrades for each building. And have it listed out. And then they select the ones that they want when they go to sign. They would select which buildings they want, and then they would sign for it. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a little bit because right now, I mean, I've pretty much used all of our 75 measurements, but I've got like a primary structure section basically, then a secondary. So I can at least do like those two separately. We have like a good, better, best in our quote, but I just like have the other one set up as like our good option just so I at least have like something in there and I can always change it out. But that way I've got at least two buildings to work with. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's that is a challenging one. It's one of those cases that we haven't really tackled in how we built ProLine quite yet. So hopefully in this next round, because with part of the Eagle View integration, we really have to do a whole overhaul of how our measurement tab works and how we're handling measurements in order to align with the data coming from Eagle View. So yeah, that's really good feedback for me to have going into that rebuild.
yeah, because we popped over from AccuLynx. We've used that for like 4 years or whatever, and it's just like add a roof or whatever, and you just type in your 5 measurements, and it kind of all pops up, and I can just keep adding roofs and like stack them on top of each other. So that's like one of the biggest things that I've noticed so far, where I was trying to find like a workaround for it or what the best option was. So that helps a little bit.
Yeah, definitely something that if we don't do it in the next like 30 to 45 days with the Eagle View, it'll be done by the end of the year at the very latest. Because I know it's something that is a pain point, you know,
Yeah,
for those chop projects like you're talking about.
cool.
Uh,
Thanks.
absolutely. So, all right, who else has a question?
I can do another one real quick. I guess
Yeah,
while
I
people
have
are there.
another one.
Um,
I guess
so
no one else has questions.
when you pop on the contact like you've got, and then you go over to the right, like the files. If you click on that and say you've got a picture or like a measurement report or whatever in there, and you go to open it up, it like overlays over top of the window instead of opening a separate tab. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we were opening it in a new tab, and then that actually led to some weird issues with like it got kind of technical. But it was like sometimes it would show and sometimes it wouldn't, especially on mobile. So we implemented this, which is going to always reliably show the content. And I think because you're the second person in the last week that has asked me about that. So maybe you can give me some feedback on this. I was thinking of adding a button here that essentially was a little like arrow out button. And when you click on that, it opens it in a new tab. That way we'll have
Yeah.
both. Is
Yeah,
that
because I mean, like obviously, if we have like a roof report or something in there, then I click it and pull it up, and I'm getting ready to plug those measurements in. Then I have to either go back to the source of the roof report or whatever to kind of be able to do that. So that was the only reason I was mentioning that.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Yeah, I think we need to have the ability to open up in a new tab. In the short run, if you're on a computer, you can just duplicate ProLine. So you can just
Okay.
duplicate the tab, and then you have ProLine open in two tabs on in your browser. So that will also solve that. But yeah, ideally, I think if we had here and then a button to click out and then open it up in a new tab, I think that would short run, or maybe even have.
Download even you could do probably right.
So you could download. Yeah, that is going to download to your computer.
Yeah.
Let me also think about maybe we change open to view, and then we have like view or open in new tab or something along that lines. Open in tab, and if you click open in tab, it opens it. So maybe I need to give you a choice, and multiple ways of viewing stuff. So that's good feedback. That's something that let me put on the list as like something that may even get knocked out tonight, just because it's not a difficult thing.
Okay.
So open file, new tab. Okay.
And then while you're there, real quick, like so you've got like the company permits, photos, all those folders and stuff. Those automatically pop up when you open a new job file each time, or you can set it up that way.
You can set it up that way. Yep. So if you go into company settings, projects, same thing for contacts too, because we have files under for individual contacts, but for projects specifically, you can create a default folders that get automatically created.
Okay.
We don't currently have it where you can create subfolders within folders. You can do that manually, but we don't have that for default folders. But right now you can create high level folders for
Okay.
defaults.
And then
So
like the photo ones, like if you just press the left or the right arrow, can you scroll through them, or do you have to open in every individual photo?
yeah, it is every individual folder photo right now.
Okay.
But another thing that's maybe not an ad like in the next 24 hours, but that is something that we'd
Yeah.
like to add in here.
Okay. I'll take a little break if anybody else has some stuff.
No worries. I like it. I appreciate the feedback. Um,
I got a question.
yes,
AJ,
sir.
what's the coolest idea that somebody that has like started using ProLine recently as far as like follow-ups or something that they're putting? Like it's a cool idea somebody's done that you hadn't seen yet. As far as
Like
like, is there
more
anybody
recent
that's done
idea.
something like a cool video or something in a sequence that you're like, ooh, we should, you
That
know what I'm
someone
saying?
has done or that someone an idea for a new feature.
No, somebody's done. Like, is there anybody that you guys have onboarded recently that's like, hey, we've got
Designing.
something in a follow-up, like a
Yeah.
best practice type thing?
Well, so the kind of couple things on I can't really show it, but if anyone listened to that podcast that we had with Scott Tebay a couple weeks ago, um, he talks about how they've actually gone into their follow-up templates and they like started with our follow-up templates, but then they like, intentionally added um misspellings and grammar mistakes into the follow-ups to make them feel more real, like a real person typed them. And they said that they immediately started getting better like results from that, which I thought was really funny. I mean, it makes sense. It's like, and I don't think we're gonna add that into our default templates per se, because I think our default templates need to be properly spelled and grammatically correct. But I think it's a cool idea for someone that does want to kind of play around. If you know if their brand allows for that, if they're comfortable with that, then going in and kind of like dropping some dropping some periods in places and doing some weird capitalization.
Yeah,
I think it makes
I like
sense.
that.
Yeah. Um, as far as other things, like on a more visual side, um, Gavin, who's on this call, we'll see if he wants to share, but Gavin showed me a pretty cool implementation of our quotes. He's really leveraging the header rows. And so he's not necessarily doing full page redesigns, at least not yet, but he's using like the custom headers for each section because you can in the quote there's a lot of. And Gavin, if you're listening, if you're on there, feel free to
Yeah,
share.
you're welcome to share
Do you have that?
whatever you want that I've shared with you.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know if I have how. Let me
I
see if I
sent
can
you a
find it.
few through email, a
Okay,
few
maybe.
examples. You can anything you have for me, you're welcome to share. No
Okay,
problem at all, of course. Hmm.
cool. Let me pull that up because I was pretty impressed with how that looked.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it kind of made everything kind of look like the same theme kind of carried across all the pages. Like certain pages that really didn't have a lot to them. For me, I kind of felt like visually it was more impactful. You kind of see the brand a little more. So I
Yep.
was pretty happy with how those turned out too.
All right, I have to reshare my screen. Okay. Um, yeah, so it was I mean it's real straightforward, but just having that header, which we'll just ignore the roofer report, though I understand. But as you get down here, just having that consistent header across all of these different pages, I think it's a great touch, and it was a good kind of relatively low lift way of elevating the design. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. Um,
That's really nice.
so yeah, the speaking of quotes, Chris, have you done any new designs lately?
Not yet. I've got somebody I'm working on locally doing some painting stuff. So
Okay.
I'm getting started on his process. So he should have some sell sheets, but this is the very beginning of like the journey. So it's getting ready to switch to ProLine, and then we're gonna work on some sell sheets for him, which like his business is painting, which is boring, epoxy garage floors, and then cabinet refinishing. And I'm like, both of those two, we can have a couple pages. We don't need much in that quote, but let's show some of that. And that will be the nice things to show off. And yeah, then just go in and follow up with all your old bids. You get a couple thousand.
Yep.
I'm excited to set up a lead rehash for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I did do a pro school on lead rehash. There's a few different ways to do it in the new system. It's a little bit harder than it was in the past. I want to do when we do launch our like dedicated marketing campaign functionality, because that's something that we're working towards hopefully by end of summer, which will be separate from our normal campaigns. Then the marketing campaigns I think will make it a lot easier because it will allow
Sweet.
it'll allow closer to that sort of MailChimp experience where you're creating an email, and then for us it will be a text as well, and then programming that to drip out a certain number per day over an extended period of time. I think it will be a better, because right now you're gonna have to the easiest approach, just FYI, when you get there, is going to be to get everything set up for the rehash, probably create a stage for the rehash as well as a campaign, and then upload everything directly into it using a CSV. Like when you're initially uploading everything, just put it right into that campaign from the start. Because once it's in ProLine, there's only one, you can do a bulk move between stages. It's just not where we want it to be. So you can do like a bulk edit and move everything into the new stage, but it's just a lot easier if you just pull it in directly CSV at the beginning. So, yeah, I guess just a side there. But yeah, I did a whole pro school on rehash. It was one of the earlier ones, but it should all be still true and accurate. So I would take a look at that.
Take a look at it.
Yeah. So, all right. Anyone else have questions for me? Anything I can help with? Anything at all? Even feedback too. It doesn't have to be a question. Like if you guys have ideas, to share, we're moving forward on a lot of stuff over the summer, but chances are it'll fall into one of the things we're already working on. So I'm happy to take additional feedback.
Call transcripts.
Yeah, you've been hearing that. Call transcripts.
Because it's doing recordings, right?
It's doing the recordings. So it is actually something that technically we have that we can just switch on. Like it's not even something that's a really big technical lift. It's more about the cost because it's pretty costly. And so we have to make sure that cost, and like, how are we going to do that? Are we going to charge an add-on for call transcripts? Are we going to do it per word or per transcript? Or there's just a lot of kind of complexity there with that. Also, one of my hopes is, and I haven't looked at the pricing recently on what that's going to cost us, but my hope is that with AI accelerating how it is, those transcript costs are going to get lower and lower. And so if they get to the point where they're and this is what was kind of my hope and why I put it off, is like, I was just sort of hoping that the cost would become negligible and we could just throw it in at some point. So it's definitely something on the radar. I don't know. I don't have an exact timeline on when it would be added. But it's on the radar.
Okay.
So, okay. Any other questions, thoughts, ideas?
Is there any way to like pack or track the like payment logging or like receipts of like stuff that you've spent? Obviously, we've got places for the customer, but I didn't know if like we went to Lowe's or went to wherever, if there's a place to kind of like track those fees under the customer.
Yep, that is on our list of things for this summer to work on. Right now, it's just these pre-built out fields. Now, what you could do in the short run as a potential short run workaround is we actually support up to 7 of these fields on the budgets. And so what you could do is go to projects, and you can either, so go to project costs, you can either just put in like a miscellaneous material cost, or you could even just put in like other cost 1, other cost 2, and just have those fields. As long as they have a label, they'll show up there. And then you can sort of, it's only then going to support a few additional items. But if you want to try to separate it out, what we're going to be working on, not early, it'll be later in the summer, but one of the things we're going to be working on is the ability for these to be actual objects where you can add any number of them. You can upload a receipt to match to it. So it's not just a number. It's also, you can put the receipt in there. And then that is going to be possibly part of a larger system that's going to not only be on the projects, but also in an admin area for like company costs. And you'll be able to possibly even tie those to specific lead sources so that you can get an accurate cost per lead. That's like long-term vision. I don't know if that's going to be V1. The V1 would definitely include like unlimited line items on the budgets. But that's sort of the long-term vision there. We do not want to try to tackle accounting. So we're also trying to navigate that. But we do also, it's really hard to get that data, like a cost per lead data out of something like QuickBooks, right? It's really tough to have it give you that information because it doesn't have the lead information. So we're trying to also navigate that. How much of the financial data are we going to try to have on our side? How is that going to work with our QuickBooks integration? So there's some complexity, but by the end of summer, we should have the ability of adding like any number of items on these budgets, both for planning and for final.
Gotcha.
So, though, yeah, we'll see. Version 1 might just be the ability to add any number on the final budget. That might be the simplest like version to move forward with, but we'll see. Because I guess on planning, it's like planning is going to be a little bit more formulaic because you don't know what the unexpected costs are, right? So you're just sort of you're planning ahead, but then on the final budget, this is where you would need to have those line items for the Lowe's trip.
Does the planning auto populate at any point, or is that main, like we have to plug that in? I didn't know if it pulled from the quote once it was approved or anything.
I believe that I can't remember. I think this does pull this gross revenue. If when a quote is signed, the gross revenue is empty, then I believe it fills it automatically. Nothing else will fill automatically. It's just that. But that I do believe does fill automatically. It's not super automated though. The idea with the planning budget is to really give everyone a free form place to sort of experiment with the numbers to make sure that you're going to be profitable. And then it's the final budget is where you're going to really track. And that gross revenue here is from the is the sum of payments. So that's the sum of payments on the payments tab.
Okay.
So.
And then like if we have a roof quote, say we're at 40% or whatever, and we've got gutters as like an upgrade on there, is there any way to like have a separate like kind of margin for those? Just because like gutters, we get them for $5 and we sell them for 12 or whatever, instead of like that 40% having like a separate margin was like really the only other thing I had a question about, I think.
I don't think if we did add something like that, it wouldn't be anytime soon.
Okay.
Right now the system is very much like the margin is the margin for the entire quote. What you can do is you have the ability to so for example with gutters, if we go to, I think I have gutters on here, lifetime gutters. Okay. This 1538 is the amount with the margin for this item. So if you want to then go back and adjust the gutter replacement cost to be you won't have anywhere to select the margin for it, but if it's like, okay, 1538 is way more than we need to charge for that. Let's do 14, not 41, but 14. You can just change it. And that's then offsetting the margin. The margin is just determining for this number that is editable, how much more above what's on your price list is it going to be. But you can edit this at any time and regardless of the margin, and it's just going to adjust. So
Okay. And if we send like a labor order to like the subcontractor or whatever, does that include the pricing like that we have set for them, or does that just include measurements? Because I was thinking about adjusting it in there, and then that way, but I didn't want to mess up like the price that I was supposed to be paying them or whatever. So that was another thing.
Oh, yeah, that does not include margin. That's going to show the actual cost if you want to show it at all. So the on the order template, so there's actually a good amount of customizability here. So what I would probably recommend, it's a separate sub for the gutters.
Gutters versus roofing, yeah.
So we can do a gutters template, or a gutters work order, or gutters work order. We'll have this default to as soon as possible. We would select the contact in the system that is for the gutter sub, so we can add them as a contact in ProLine, and then we'll select them here. We can have default notes if we want. We can determine if we even want to show pricing. Like you might want to send it to him and just see what he quotes you back, right? And not necessarily give him the amount up front. But it just depends on your relationship with him. You can certainly show line item costs, show group. You'd want to show group cost totals, I think. So then you have conversion, and you would not want to you would want to only convert selected upgrades. And you would include only labor. And this is going to create a work order. And now it's not necessarily going to only select the gutters. So you will maybe need to do a tweak before you send it, but it's going to get pretty close because it's only going to use the selected upgrades and the labor. And then we probably don't need to, if you had like an other trades, maybe you would Sage, you might want to select it there, but let's now go create this. So we'll create an order. We're going to choose, I need to clean up all of these. All right, gutters work order. So it pulled in, the only thing that was selected on that quote was the lifetime pipe boots. And I guess also, I'm pretty sure gutters would be materials, not necessarily labor. It just depends on how you have it in the system. So you might have to tweak that. Let's actually do this. So let's just sign this quote, and we'll select gutters so that there's a gutters. I can show you what that looks like. Okay. So we will select the seamless gutters, main building. Okay. So now we have a signed quote there. We will go back. Let me look in the price list to see what we had gutters as. So if I go to quotes, price list. Sure why that's doesn't seem to be loading right. There we go. Okay, gutter replacement. Okay, so that is as labor. So that should work. So we'll do order. Oh, it has to be that one that we just got signed. Signed 3.5. Gutters work order. So it pulls in the seamless gutters. It has, well, so this was listed as an upgrade, so it pulled that in too. But it did only pull in the labor. But if it did pull in multiple upgrades, you would just delete everything but the gutters, and then customize the rest of it. it's going to automatically put the cover photo in here, which you can replace if you want to, but that's mostly just so they go to the right place. And then you can send this. So, and then as far as what it's going to, and the template needs to be changed so it says gutters ordered. And then because of how the template is set up, I believe, so it's going to show the price here. Is that what you were wanting? You want to show them the price?
Well, I was just thinking if I adjusted it so like it was the 40% like margin or whatever, instead of like typing in their price, if I just instead of $5, if I typed it as $8 to get it up to $12 or whatever at the margin, I didn't know if it would like show them the price, but I can turn that on or off, right? And
You
just give them
can.
however many feet it is.
Yes, you can do that. And this price is going to be the cost, not with the margin. So
Yeah.
this is what you pay to them. So if we go look at that signed quote, if we go look at that, it's going to show that the signed for amount for seamless gutters is 172. So that's with the margin. And then if we go to the order, we'll see that it's listed here for 118. So that's with no markup. No, or that's not correct. It's not markup. I need to change that to say margin. So yeah, that's without the margin. And yeah. So either way, it's only going to send him what is your actual cost on it, which should be what he's charging you. But you can also just hide it so it doesn't send it to him at all.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
all right. Okay. We will, unless anyone else has additional questions, we can wrap up there. Any other last second things to cover? Kyla, Andrew? All good. All good if not. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining today, and everybody have a good week.